Perfect. So, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Kalechi or Dr. Kalechi C. Fluid, a board member with the Mid Atlantic Group Psychotherapy Society, and I have the distinct pleasure of interviewing Paula D. Atkinson, our presenter for the fall conference. Paula D. Atkinson is a licensed independent clinical social worker working as a psychotherapist in private practice. She is also a yoga teacher, certified at the highest level. A Reiki practitioner and writer, Paula has worked for years with those who suffer from disordered eating, food obsession, exercise compulsion, and body hatred. She treats clients of all sizes and identities with weight neutral, anti diet, body liberation approach. Paula is a health at every size registered practitioner, a member of the International Association of Eating Disorders Professionals, the National Association of Social Workers, and the Association of Social Work Boards. She is currently working on a book of essays on the topic of body sovereignty, food sanity, and freedom for bodies of all shapes. Welcome, Paula.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Very happy to be here.
We're so happy to have you. Thank you again for agreeing to this interview. In reading your bio, I wanted to start out by asking you a couple of questions so that our conference participants can get to know you a little bit better.
Great.
What does being a body justice activist mean to you?
Being a body justice activist, to me, it means actively working against the systems that are in place that brainwash us to believe that we can tell a person's worth by the shape of their body. Meaning a person who lives in a larger body is seen as less valuable in our culture than a person in a small body. And there are countless systems that hold that up and are affected by that bizarre belief, that in the belief of the hierarchy of bodies, that bodies can be judged, can be put in a hierarchy.
So the belief that a person of one weight size and a person of another weight size don't have equal rights,
what would you say? Rights, access, regard, reverence. Yeah.
So how does this topic of fat phobia, sizeism, thin idealism, and weight stigma intersect with other forms of oppression?
So they all sort of intersect, right? I teach a course at George Washington University called Weight and Society about body justice. And the entire semester, we're talking about how all of these things intersect, right? They kind of, one can't live without the other. There's, one of the things I talk about a lot is that the history of fat phobia, which is inherently racist, right? The idea that at what time, when around the time where they were doing things called eugenics in France, in the United States and in other parts of Europe, there was this desire for thin Europeans to distinguish themselves from, in this country, the people who had just been freed, right? And so the history of fat phobia is one of blatant white supremacy. So there's that. There's also in our culture this idea that we can tell somebody's worth by the shape of their body. During COVID, we were just talking about this, right? Yeah. I kept getting the question, well, but if somebody's obese, they're going to die of COVID, right? First of all, how do we know if somebody's obese or overweight? It's based on this ridiculous system called the BMI, which was created in 1830 by a man whose findings later went on to help people who are practicing eugenics. So there's the racist part. And then what we do know is that the people who were living in poverty absolutely had more of a chance of dying of COVID. They couldn't stay in their homes. They had to work, right? They already have limited access to healthcare. Yeah. But we don't like to talk about the fact that we have systemic poverty in our culture, and we have a working class of people that the culture keeps down. What we can talk about is fatness, right? And we
Mm.
believe that fatness is something that everybody can control, that everybody has 100% of the control over the shape of their body 100% of the time. And that is blatantly scientifically false.
Mm.
So all of these things, and then misogyny, right? We know that women are more, for a man to be fat is not good, right? But they're not oppressed. There's not as many biases that they experience on a daily basis than a woman, right? And then when we talk about the hierarchy of bodies, right? A woman of color, a fat woman of color, a fat trans woman of color is going to be at the bottom, right? And then you get more and more privilege as you get more white, more male, more cis, more straight, right?
Wow.
So they all intersect with each other. Does that all make sense?
It makes a whole lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense. I mean, I think what it does is it doesn't allow us to have the conversations that we need to have, right?
Precisely, right. It is a gate. It is, yeah, it's a gate to having topics about systemic racism. But if we just talk about fatness, which is just the thing that has always happened, there's always been fat bodies on the planet, right? It's the idea that they're wrong or they need to be fixed is a relatively new idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So how do we see this played out in the group format? These beliefs.
Yeah, I'm so excited to do this because as a therapist, I've had so many clients who have been harmed in groups because of everyone in the group sort of colluding around the belief in weight bias, right? And colluding around the idea that a person could be more valuable if they made their body smaller. And so for all of us group practitioners to open our minds to the idea that our own internalized fat phobia, our own internalized body hatred, the way we think about our own bodies, obviously is going to spill out all over the people that we're treating, the group members that we're facilitating. And so that we can stop it in all the ways that we, I hope, as group members are committed to stopping any kind of bias, stopping any kind of harm, any kind of violations that are being done. Fat phobia and anti-fat bias comes out all the time, even in things that are seemingly innocuous. And this is what I love to talk about with people. Like, even if somebody has lost weight and they come into the group and everybody's like, oh my God, you look amazing, that is harmful.
Wow.
That is a violation. Wow. We do not celebrate weight loss.
Wow.
Right? Because what that does is to the person whose body is big, who their body doesn't want to be smaller, so their body is still big. Well, how does that make them feel? And it's so much a part of our culture. It's the air we breathe. That we don't even notice that it's happening, right? That's a thing that I've been a part of. My body has been lots of different sizes over my life, and I have seen that happen, right? Yeah. And people have applauded it when I've lost weight, and I thought that was good, and I thought I enjoyed that, right? So the more careful we can be, and the more conscious we can be, and I think this is true of all the diversity and inclusion work that we as practitioners need to be doing. I think the less harm that we can do for everybody. And in my body liberation groups, it's so amazing to watch people not doing these things, not participating in any of it, completely denying diet culture and sin supremacy, and like being able to live in the fullness of their bodies.
One of the things that you said stuck out to me. We do not celebrate weight loss, and I know the context in which you're saying it, and I'm sure people are like, well, I thought it was a good thing. Right. So can you give us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, I mean, if you were celebrating weight loss, we are at the exact same time shunning a body that is large, right? You can't have one without the other, right? And so we do not celebrate weight loss. Number one, because, I mean, from an eating disorder standpoint, not everybody who goes on a diet gets an eating disorder, but nobody gets an eating disorder without going on a diet. So if a person is dieting, if a person is not eating enough such that their body is eating itself to survive, which is what weight loss is, there are psychological and physical damage that's going
Yes.
on,
Yes.
right? Diets are inherently dangerous.
Yes.
And so we're applauding that,
Mhm.
right? We also have no idea why a person's body got smaller, right? And people, maybe somebody has cancer, maybe somebody is deeply depressed, maybe somebody is struggling with anxiety. And
Yeah.
so the idea that a body getting smaller is always something to be celebrated, is always a good thing, that's really problematic. Because that means the opposite, that right, if a body is getting bigger, that means that there's something wrong with them. There's a characterological, moral problem happening if somebody's body is getting bigger.
And I know that we see it a lot in the media, right?
Totally.
I mean, we have been inundated with content and information about
Constantly.
other people speaking on other people's bodies. But in your everyday interactions as an educator, what are some things that you can tell people or encourage people to do?
I mean, one of my favorite things that I say all the time is we don't talk about people's bodies ever, ever, ever.
Ever.
Right? I do not talk about people's bodies ever. I mean,
Mm,
and it's so weird, right? Because it just happens all the time, and we think that that's like a normal thing to talk about, but it is a violation
mm,
always to talk about somebody's body, always. So I don't talk about people's bodies, I don't talk about food. The other thing is, it's so boring, you guys, it's so boring. Right? It's actually so freeing to like never talk about diet and food and good food and bad food and weight loss, and it's like it's such freedom because there's
mm.
so many incredible things to actually be talking about. um you know, I'm not a dietitian, but I send people to anti-diet dietitians, and we me and the dietitians work together in recognizing that there's no such thing as bad food, right? There's so much inherent racism and white supremacy and classism in what's considered good food and what's considered bad food, right? And so we don't participate in any of that. We don't participate in good bodies and bad bodies, right? And
Mm.
I know this can sound really like, what is this lady talking about? But like, it's actually so freeing to
Mhm.
just distance oneself from all of it, to like, there's like t-shirts that say diet culture dropout. And it's like, it's so nice to drop out of it. Like, I'm just not going to participate in any of it.
That.
Yeah,
And I think what you're speaking to on a larger level is the ability to see a person,
exactly.
right? Because one of the things you said that stuck out to me was we can talk about so much more.
Totally.
There's so much more to
Yes.
discuss about an individual.
And exactly. And what that actually frees us to do is that all, specifically women, but not always, right? I think that capitalism has found out that they can make men hate their bodies and get money from them too. But what it does is it frees women up to all of the things that they could be spending their energy on,
Mm,
right? And that's why I like to do it in a group setting where, I think of a group as a function of allowing a person to become the most integrated, authentic, expansive version of themselves. And if we're still participating in fat phobia and thin supremacy in the group, that means there's still an idea that 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 people should be spending their energy on changing their body shape, which is such a silly thing to be spending your time doing.
yeah, yeah. It's such a it's just all of it, right? I think
Yeah.
one of the things that I'm finding myself being enlightened about is that even when I think about everyday experiences, talking about people's bodies, having questions about people's bodies, congratulating or not congratulating, it just
Yeah.
has always been a part of our conversation and discourse,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. Yeah.
And so
Yes.
there has to be some intentionality about not doing
Yeah. And what I yes. And what I find is that it actually frees everyone.
that.
You
Yeah.
know, we think, especially women, I talk about this in my class a lot, like women participate in fat talk with each other, like, oh, I'm fat. No, you're fat. No, I'm fat, right? Or whatever. And we've been brainwashed to believe that's a way to connect with each other. But what I find is if I don't, nope, right? Like everybody actually, and there's actually studies that say everybody actually feels better if we're not participating in any of the nonsense and the shame about like my body is the wrong size or your body is the wrong size. Like it frees everybody up. It leaves, if you allow my California talk, it lifts the vibration, right?
Yep.
Like the vibration lifts, because like that vibration of not seeing each other as human, right? One of my favorite writers, Lindy West, says to live in a fat body is to be both invisible and too visible at the same time.
Mm.
And when we lift out of that into like seeing everybody for as a human, not how much adipose tissue is on their body, which is such a ridiculous thing to focus on,
Mm.
then it lifts the vibration up, right?
I hope that other people hearing this interview are also taking in the information, because I'm taking it in,
Nice.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and 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 I love that whole sentiment of lifting the vibration, of removing just all of the energy from
Yes.
around it and focusing on something else. Um,
Yes.
so, how do
Yes.
you envision that attendees might benefit from having a greater understanding of the role that body justice plays in group work?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my my fantasy is that everybody has a like a incredible amazing breakthrough, and everybody walks out loving their body.
Of
But
course.
truly, when it comes to all of the work that I think we're trying to do as clinicians, as providers, of looking inside, looking at all of the ideas and stories and narratives and beliefs that I have been told about me and my worth, and what makes me a good worthy human and what makes me a not worthy right. The more work that I do on my own, the more I raise the vibration, right, such
Mhm.
that the people in my groups, they don't have to, first of all, they don't have to carry my heavy vibrations, and
Yes.
then they can be lifted too. And even if they can just touch it, when I start working with clients, sometimes they're like, you are nuts. Like, what is this lady talking about? Um, right. But like over time, as as humans, we kind of naturally move toward the highest vibration, even if
Yeah.
it's not in this lifetime, but we naturally move towards the highest
Mm.
vibration. So I think as that's what we're trying to do as providers is excavate the ways in which we've been taught to hate myself, to think I could be better, the thoughts around like if I lost 5 pounds, I would be a more worthy, blah, 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 right?
Mm.
We excavate those, we release those, and then we free our group members, we free our clients.
I think both parts, right? Not only do we free our group members, but we free our clients. And
Yes,
because everyone that's attending the conference is a clinician in some way, shape, or form,
exactly.
and we are all challenged or charged with doing no harm, right?
Exactly.
So this notion of freeing our clients,
Yeah,
what does that look like? How can we continue to be a part of that?
precisely. Right.
Yeah.
My dream is that nobody seeking mental health services will ever feel like they would be more mentally healthy if they lost weight, right? They would
Mm.
never, I hear stories, and I know that the clinicians that they went to are hard, they're innocent, they're in it too, right? They're they're just they believe that about themselves, so they believe that
Mhm.
about their client. And
Yeah.
so yeah, yeah,
This is good. This is good stuff. And so,
great.
Paula, how can people, I guess, get more information about body justice, be an advocate for body justice,
Yeah.
just like you? What are some ideas or thoughts that you have?
So I provided a reading list,
Yep.
and then there's one podcast on there. There's
Mm.
also so many incredible podcasts, and there's so many incredible body justice activists, and specifically fat positive activists that are doing incredible work right now.
Good.
And seek them out. There's books being written. There's I do trainings for clinicians. I do consulting with clinicians. I do trainings for clinics. I got asked by a organization within the medical school at NYU to do a talk, which like I almost couldn't do the talk because I was just so overwhelmed that they
So
want to
cool.
know. I know, right? That they want to know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Um, so it's getting better. I just feel like it's hopeful. It's getting better. And yeah, there's a lot of resources out there, and I'm happy to provide more.
Yeah. And how do we connect with you? What's the best way that people can connect with you if they want to invite you to other institutions, if they want to have more discourse, if they want to invite you to a space?
Yeah. So I'm Paula D. Atkinson on everything on Instagram. My website is pauladatkinson.com. My email is pauladatkinson@gmail.com. I'd be happy to connect with some of the participants before we arrive at the beginning of November. If people have questions for me or want more things to read, I'd be happy to provide all of that.
So I just want to take the time to thank you, Paula. One, for availing yourself before the conference to even have this interview, but just even your spirit and your energy, right? That you brought even into this interview. I know that it's going to be just the same in the conference. So I want to thank you for allowing us to interview you and to get a little bit of insight into what we may be experiencing at the fall conference. And just thank you for the work that you're doing, because it's necessary work and it's important work. And we're going to leave with the, we never, ever, ever talk about someone's body, right? And so
No.
that's not what we do. So we're definitely reminded of that today. Any final thoughts or final words that you have?
No, I'm just really, this got me, I mean, I was already excited for the conference, obviously, but talking to you, Dr. Fluitt, has made me like, oh, I'm very excited now. I'm really eager to be with everybody who's decided to come.
Yes, we're excited about the fall conference. If you need more information about the fall conference, please go to the MAGPS website. Like Paula said, we will have all the information that she provided to us, to you, conference recipient or conference participants, so that you can have the articles, the podcast, all the ways to connect with her. We thank you for your time to watch this video, and we hope you have a great day.
Yay, see you soon.
I'm going to stop the recording.